name is Danielle, and I am with the Femme Fertile channel on YouTube. So if you're following me, you already know that. And I'm here with author Lania Salas from Born to Love with her novel. It was really great. So we're going to take some time to meet with her today and kind of pick her brain on being a single mother by choice and what she went through and how we can navigate that. Welcome.
Hi, Danielle. It's nice to see you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're able to join us today. So, when did you write your novel? What year was it that you started with this?
I started writing that about 2 years ago. I wrote about 1/3 of it, and then during the initial lockdown of 2020, I wrote the remaining of it and got it published like a month after finishing it. So things went very fast once the universe provided me the time to get it done. Yes.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that you wrote this because as I was reading it, I remember thinking, I've never found anything like this when I'm still on my journey, but I have not come across anything like this that I thought I could really relate to and that could actually help me.
Yes.
So I'm so glad that you did that.
There was nothing that I could find when I was searching for information when I was trying to become a single mother by choice myself. There was just like an article or two that I found, and since then a couple of books have been published, and they're more of a guide, but none that were the story of a person, as in that person. When you read a book, the author becomes you a little bit, and you go through the experience of that person. And from then on, things start becoming familiar. So that was my purpose of writing that book, specifically for young women who are starting their journeys into TTCers, or yes, becoming single mother by choice triers.
It seems like this is starting to become more of an accepted way of life for people. People are actually wanting to understand why single mothers by choice go through this process and that we're normal people. So, I mean, it's really interesting how we can follow your journey from the very beginning, from when you feel like you decided that you wanted to be a single mom by choice, and just kind of see in the book how you transitioned into that to actually having your baby. So you have 2 sons now, right? How old are they?
Yes, they're 11 already. So I have that perspective of the journey of becoming a single mother and my kids growing up, and enough experience with them handling a lot of the serious questions that come into our mind. And when we are making the decision to become a single mother, the things that we worry about, the ones that, that keep us frozen with fear and not going ahead and doing it.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Okay, so in the book, you had decided to go with a sperm bank. So, could you tell us your thoughts on the differences between known donors and anonymous donors? Because a lot of people, when they first start out on this journey, they're trying to figure out which is best for them, and the difference between the two.
There wasn't much information that I could read on to decide, but of course, wanting to become a mother, I had thought about the possibility of asking a friend. First, I thought, I might fall in love with a person, with a friend that I like, get married. If not, maybe I can ask this other person, but there were reasons keeping me from it. One was a level of security, like confidence in asking a friend that I would know. At that point, I can't say that it wasn't very popular. I think that I'm just hearing for the first time in the single mother by choice forums about companies or websites that you go to search for a known donor. I hadn't even joined the Single Mothers by Choice group when I started searching information to become a single mother. So the first thing that occurred to me was to search, do a Google search for Sperm Bank, and I came up with California Cryobank as one of the most widely known and used, and I thought maybe I'll go with this. So I started doing search. I created an account, started doing search on donors, and then when I went to a specialist on RE, I found out that that's the company that I prefer to work with. So I thought, that's the one thing to do. But I wish if I could go back, that's one of the things that I would do. I would research more. I would ask a lot of questions. I would ask the banks instead of just reading what is in their website, ask the banks specifically how many families, what does it mean that number of families. I would write a whole list of questions to ask the sperm banks, find out information. Yeah. What they publish is not necessarily what the truth is.
I've heard of some breakthroughs that people have had where they kind of go back and look from previous times where they had donors that may have lied on applications or things like that, and it's actually being brought to light now. So you actually see on television with a breaking news story on it. But at the same time, I think it's the same thing with the known donors. You have some that are bad apples, and you have some that and they can say what their intention is, and we just have to take it at face value. They can do scientific testing with the donors, the sperm banks, to let us know, if they have anything. But at the end of the day, there's always that small little risk. But if you think about it, it's kind of the same with, dating someone and marrying them. You're still taking a risk.
Yes, it's still
even
a big
if you have
risk.
children with them, they could have a disease pop up. Or there's always a chance
one difference that I have noted between having, let's say, a one-night stand and, with someone you don't know and might not hear of afterwards, is that if you decide to search this person, you can ask him, ask some friends, maybe ask some family members about the family history. With a donor from a sperm bank, you cannot do that. There is a blockade of information between the bank and the customer. They don't let you have any knowledge of who he is, who the family is, and what kind of history. You could ask for history, for an updated health history from the bank, but between asking for it and them providing it, there's a big difference. There's way too much time.
And then with the sperm banks, a recipient, a single mother, can actually go and select the option where they can choose a donor that's willing to meet with the child after 18.
Yes.
And the child can find out that information. And I actually think with, I had done some research where if the donor actually finds out that he is sick with something or he has a disease that could be genetic, then he can notify the bank, and then the bank will notify the recipients so they can pass that along to their children. But something I do want to talk about is in your book, you had mentioned that whenever you were picking out your donor, that you could actually, there was an option where you could pay to see more pictures of them. And so you can get a little bit more information. And I've never been on the sperm bank websites as a subscriber or anything like that, because I'm going with a known donor. So it's really interesting for me to see this other side of it, but they probably developed it maybe a little bit more since then with the sperm banks, where that you can see more information. And I think it's really great that you can look at the pictures and you can kind of get an idea between your baby pictures and the donor, what the baby might look like. So
yes, I did love having the baby picture of my chosen donor. Let me see, one thing else that I wanted to me.
So you've mentioned that your experience is with the anonymous donors. Do you ever kind of go back and wish that you had, now that things have developed a little further, to go with a known donor, or do you feel like it was the best for you to go with an anonymous donor?
So it was the best choice for me, given the information that I had at the moment. Again, I would do a lot more information and ask people like we're doing now, interview people that have already gone through the process. One thing about using a known donor that I think a company facilitates is if there's ever a legal issue and you need to prove that you were artificially inseminated and that the person was a donor.
Mm,
If you do it through a clinic, and if you more than anything, if you do it through a clinic
mm-hmm.
with a doctor, it's different and it's legally different than if you decide to do an on-home insemination, and that is something big to consider.
Yes, definitely. Because something I had looked at, and really the only reason why I was a little bit um, nervous
Reluctant.
donor is the legal
Mhm.
aspect of it. Because
Yes.
when you have an anonymous donor and you go through a bank, they're already handling all of that for you. But when you have a known donor, you have to go to a lawyer yourself. You have to look at the contract yourself. You have to make sure
Mhm.
you add in things,
Yes.
protect yourself. So you
Yes.
kind of take away that extra layer
Yes.
of protection that you might otherwise have
Yes.
with the bank.
And even still, if you want the fresh sample, you can ask a doctor to implant it in you if that's a possibility. That adds a level, yes, another level, another layer of coverage in case you have any legal issues or any legal concerns. One of the things that I needed is to prove to different agencies that I used a donor and it was artificial insemination. So I went to my clinic and my doctor provided a letter saying that I was implanted with 2 embryos.
Okay, that's
Yes,
wonderful.
that has helped. Yes, I didn't need it in when getting the boys' passports. With the boys' passports, the only thing they asked was that there was no name on the birth certificate for a father. But for other agencies, they have required more detailed information that it was donor conceived or artificial insemination.
Yeah, and that's stuff that we might not think about in the moment as we're going
Mhm.
through trying to
Yes,
conceive, but in the future
yes,
we need it for the children. So I'm
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Now I with my process, it's been kind of daunting because I feel like the known donor websites that I've seen and the apps that you can have, I feel like it's almost a bit similar to dating because
Oh,
because you
tell me about it.
yeah, it's like you're seeing the picture. They tell you, things about themselves. They're trying to impress you. And then, you'll see the baby photos and then you're trying to piece things together and you can ask them questions. They can ask you questions and that'll be deal breakers or not. And so when I first started doing that, I thought this is so weird. I feel like I'm like I'm dating because you're trying to find out information about these people that you haven't met. And later on you can, but actually they have the option with the known donors that it can they can ship to you.
Mhm.
But again, with all of that, you have to be extremely careful with the contracts and all. Or you can go with the known donor, and they can actually go to the clinic with you and sign the paperwork as a known donor.
I imagine one of the good things is that you have a flexibility on that contract that you create.
Mhm.
Whilst with the clinic, you do not have a flexibility. They have the one and only contract, you sign it, or you can't work with them.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point too.
Mhm.
So something else I was thinking about was you had gone through this process before. About how many years ago? Well, you said your sons are 11, right? So maybe about 12 years ago you went through this process. So everything's kind of developed a little bit more. So it might be a bit easier
Yes.
now.
Yes, it's one of the reasons I wanted to interview with you, because you provide a completely different perspective than the one that I have, and the ones that the people that have become my friends in the single mothers by choice forums, the ones from my generations, they don't have this perspective. While you and the younger women that are trying now, they have a completely different options, and I'm loving that. I'm loving. I When people ask me, would you do it this way or would you do it that way? I'm like, it's interesting. I don't know that much about the way that you're doing it with a known donor, but it has its advantages, so it's very worth it to try to see how, that goes, to go through the experience. And I would classify things like you just said, with red flags, yellow flags, or green flags. Red flags, stop, don't go that way, or don't go with that one donor. Yellow flags, I call it proceed with caution. It's not a big deal. Green
Yes.
flag, go for it.
And it's interesting that you're saying that, because in your book you were talking about you were looking at the website and you brought in a friend to help you try to pick out, is this a deal breaker, is it not? Because you really have to decide those things for yourself. I'm there, but I'm really thankful to you and for the people that have done this before me, because you're actually making it so much easier for the rest of us that are coming along. And this is our only chance to be able, to have our baby and to have our dream with our children.
Yes.
You doing this and the people before me doing this, y'all have paved the way, so it makes it so much easier. I cannot imagine what you really had to go through. I mean, I read your book, but having to deal with that, even now, it's it almost seems like it's taboo, and you're kind of afraid to talk about it. Are you going to be judged? Are you going to be looked at differently? And you really address a lot of that, and I can only imagine how it was before.
Yes.
When it wasn't as well known, it wasn't as accepted, and women didn't feel like they could come forward and get help and communicate about these things.
Yes. So that's one of the good things about having the Single Mothers by Choice groups, because we're all together. I'm not longer the only person. When I was going through it, I was the only person I knew who had ever gone through it. And right now in my family, in my hometown, I might still be the only person who have gone through it. So there's a lot of taboo still there, but I don't feel it anymore, because I know worldwide a lot of people, a lot of women who have gone through the process. So I'm not as intimidated as I used to be back then.
Yeah, that makes
I have a very nice anecdote with my boys were born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the States. That was where my clinic was. But when they were a few months old, I brought them to Puerto Rico to visit family and meet family, and I had to get them a local pediatrician. So the pediatrician asked me to fill out the paperwork, and I wrote NA for a father, for the line for a father, and the work, and then, on the insurance of the father, I wrote NA for that section. And when the pediatrician came to see me, she started telling me that it was important, even if the father was no good person, no good man, that I had to include him in the life and the paperwork of the kids. And I started, freaking out. What will I do? Should I put the donor number on there? and I told her, well, it was artificial insemination. It was IVF. It was through a clinic. I don't know the donor. And the more information I said, the more, she opened her eyes, and she suddenly said back to me, oh, that doesn't happen here. In her many, many years of experience, because she had been a pediatrician to me once, and now I had chosen her to be my boy's new pediatrician, she had never seen a case of a single mother by choice.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's still not that widely known. Although I can tell you that in Albuquerque, I did not have that experience. People, doctors were very understanding. It's just when you come to a smaller town or, smaller place, that you have to deal with those kind of stranger questions than you're used to.
No, I live in a small town. It's close to a bigger town, but it's relatively small, and a lot of people know everyone. And I had actually done a fundraiser, and I was sharing all these things and kind of my journey with people that were close to me, and knew about it and had kind of been encouraging in the process. And my pastor found out about it, and so we actually sat down, and we're talking about something else, and he asked me, so what is this about? So there I am trying to explain donor conception and all of that with my pastor. And so it's he was supportive and very kind about it, but
Nice.
It's very nerve-wracking when you're trying to think about how to tell people these things. And I know that you mentioned in your book about having to talk to your boss I know we weren't going to discuss that until later on, but I kind of feel like it ties in with right now. In the book, we were talking about you didn't want to tell your boss, and there was another lady that was pregnant and didn't want to tell the boss until it was later on because you were concerned about, I don't use this word lightly, but I felt like it was discrimination.
Yes, I definitely feel like it was discrimination. But when I came to, do a lawsuit, I found out that you have to prove that it's discrimination, and it's not necessarily obvious to everybody else. It was very, very hard to prove discrimination. In the end, my lawyers decided that it was better for me to settle than to continue on to court. They thought they could win a case in court, but they were not sure. To me and to any woman I've talked to, it was obviously discrimination.
And that's a terrible situation to be in because you already have your babies inside of you. You're already going through with this, and you're trying to plan for the future, not only for you, but for your children. And all that was laid out, and then they just kind of pull the rug out from under you. And it's kind of like, what do?
Yes.
You tried to make the best out of it. I think you had mentioned in the book that because of it, you were able to spend time with your family. You were able to spend more time with your children when they were born. But at the same time, as single mothers, I would imagine, we all want to have that security because
that's what we rely on. That's our husband. Our job is our husband, is what supports us. So we completely depend on it. And suddenly I found myself with expecting twins and without a job, without that security of an income. And it's not until I looked back years later that I found the benefits of being able to find more time with my children. And I do give thanks to God because I was able to. And I had them for a couple of years. But it's also, at the time, it's just nerve-wracking to not have that that security of your regular income. It was I can tell you that I fell into depression because suddenly I was on top of the world, so independent, so secure of what I was doing, or more or less secure of what I was doing. But suddenly my security was not there. And it's not like it was going to be easier for me finding a job while pregnant or with newborns. Plus, it was the worst time in the economy. It was in 2009, 2008. The house crisis occurred, and people were without a job, and people all over the United States and all over the world were having a lot of trouble finding new jobs. It wasn't just me, but yes, I had to go through a lot of financial difficulty.
Yeah, and something that I had read in your book too, and just kind of getting to know you better when we first started talking, you're a very intelligent individual, so it's not like you couldn't do your work, but once you become pregnant, they find out they're going through this, and you only really have yourself to rely on to go through this process, and you have all these appointments and everything scheduled. Sometimes they might look at you differently in the workplace. And so it kind of came to a point, I think I'd read, where someone had mentioned, well, you have to choose between your family and your future or your work. And I don't feel that we should have to do that as women.
We should not. No, we shouldn't.
Because I don't think they would ask a man to do the same.
No,
no,
definitely that doesn't happen. Plus, I think that only single fathers will see themselves in the situation. Because most men would still, rely on the wife to be the one to be absent from the work and take care of the child. But it doesn't happen the other way around yet. We have to make these changes. That's the other reason I talk about my journey and this part of my experience, because we have to create the change. We have to be the change.
Yeah. Now, kind of just piggybacking on ethics here, since we've been that for a little bit. Another thing that pops up often in the single mothers by choice forums and things that I've seen is sibling registries. So, and I've actually seen some other things on the news before. It seems to be a hot topic about sibling registries with anonymous donors. Sometimes people want to connect their children with the other offspring from the same donor, and so they're trying to kind of. I don't know if maybe a family is the right word, but they're trying to connect and learn more about that piece of their genetic DNA of where they come from. So can you tell us your thoughts on that about sibling
Yes.
registries?
So when I first began looking or considering having children through a donor, my worst fear was exactly that there were going to be more children born from the same donor. If you think of the boyfriends you've had, would it be okay if he impregnates, your friend and the neighbor
Right.
and another woman from out of state? You would not be okay with that. I
Right.
realized at that point that I was a jealous woman. I wanted him just for myself, and I wanted to do everything possible to buy as many vials as possible to try to get him off the market. But
Absolutely. I think I would do
with
the same.
donor, I found out through the years, no, that is not possible. It's way too many. The sperm gets divided into too many vials. It gets frozen. It gets stored for years. Your children might have children by the time they have other younger siblings, another new generation of blood relatives. So I think that's all horrible. What I didn't know was that the other children about my kids' age, the other children that I am familiar with, that I have met parents, that has been the best experience.
Okay.
And that wasn't something that I expected at all. My greatest fear turned into something wonderful. I love seeing pictures of the other children, comparing them to my own children, being able to exchange health information with those other mothers.
Wow.
That's priceless. And on top of that, getting to meet with them and seeing the children play with each other.
How was that meeting with the other
Wonderful,
same
wonderful.
process?
It was wonderful. The kids being started, like when the child starts in a new school, he looks around, he doesn't know the people, and within a day or two, they have friends. So these kids have a connection that is more like a cousin's connection within a minute of it's as soon as they contact themselves, like they have eye to eye an interaction, they become best friends forever. These kids, yes, there's a magnetism to the reaction. It's almost immediate. Yes.
So you noticed a lot of similarities between the
Yes.
children when they met?
Yes, yes, it is nice to see. There's a lot on the smile. Most of them have a white smile, and we call it the Joker smile, and that gene comes from the donor. And there's a picture that we did of a lot of the girls, and we show their feet because their toes are very similar. I think I will be able to recognize the donor just by looking at his feet. What
So
else I can think
how
of?
did your kids
Just
take
those
it
two.
when they met the other children that
So my kids think of them like when they're not together. When we talk about them, we call them brothers and sisters. I have always used those terms with them, but
okay.
they see them as cousins that they don't see on a daily basis. Yes, the relationship, the long distance relationship is more like cousins. When they're together, they're obviously brothers and sisters.
Now with the sibling registry, is there a website that they can register with, or does the bank actually start the registry for the sibling?
So some banks have a registry on their own, and that's nice because you can, start meeting each other, and probably there's not a fee to it. Not all banks have that. What we did with California Cryo Bank was that as soon as we met each other, just a group, a small or initial small group, we formed a Facebook page to try to stay, you know, as close as possible and without restrictions from the Sperm Bank. But there is a registry called the Donor Sibling Registry, and it's available to everybody who desires to use it. And you pay a fee,
Mhm.
and you can pay an annual fee, or I don't know if it's an annual or a monthly fee, or you can do a lifetime fee, just like with the single mothers by choice group. I did that one bigger fee, and I only paid for that once, and I haven't had to think about it again. I've been member with the donor sibling registry website for my boys were 1 year old, so 10 years now.
Okay.
I have not met anyone through that site, but there are a lot of families that connect that way, especially if your bank doesn't have any access to the other siblings.
So that's something
One
that you
thing
offer.
is that even the donor or the donor's family can join, but you have the option to contact each other's in an anonymous way. You don't have to provide any um, identifying information,
Mhm.
which I think it's great. You can take it slowly, as slowly as you want. You can just ask questions about health. You can provide only questions about health, or you can decide that at some point you wanted to meet each other. Um, I have gone through the process enough that I know that at some point I want to meet the donor, and I want my kids to meet the donor, even if they're not 18 yet. I am not trusting the bank to create those connections when the kids are 18. I'm not trusting the banks anymore.
It's nice that you can opt in and do that. That with the internet, we have that where we could actually have the opportunity because
Mhm,
maybe before that wasn't an option. So that's really
mhm.
great to hear. Well, we are at our time for today, but I would like to share with you again the book Born in Love by
Thank
Lania.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us. What we're going to be doing is we're going to have a second part. We're going to be talking about some other topics like um, how do you look for a donor, the process of that, and talking to your family about the situation because that can be really scary in itself. So thank you so much, Lania, and I look forward to meeting with you again soon. And stay tuned, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.